Hello and welcome to a video demo of the Dynamic Signal Processing Workflow Designer developed by me, Joey Pinto, during the Google Summer of Code 2018 for the International Neuroinformatics Coordinating Facility under the mentorship of Petr Rezek. Let's get started. The project has been implemented on a web server that basically means you can access it using a simple browser. I log into the system with my credentials and enter into the main screen of the project. The blank area that you see here is the canvas, and this is the library. The library right now is empty, so I'm going to go ahead and create my own project. In my IDE, I have a simple class made here called arithmetic, which does a simple function of performing an arithmetic operation on integers OP1 and OP2 and storing their output into OP3. I annotate this entire class with the block type annotation defined in the project. I mark the type of the block as arithmetic and the family as math, just to make it easy to classify. The input integers are marked with block input and are given a specific name, that's operand 1 and operand 2. The type is also defined to be a number. The output block similarly is defined as operand 3, which is also a number. I define a property of the block called operation, which essentially is a string, which has a default value add, and basically can be any one of add, subtract, multiply, or divide. A block execute method, that's the process method that I've made here, does the simple work of using a switch case statement to perform the respective operation on OP1 and OP2 and store the output in OP3. The method also returns the string value of OP3. I then package this project into a simple jar file like this, and this jar file is then imported into the Workflow Designer. I mentioned the package name of the project. I also make the jar public if I want anyone else accessing the same server to be able to use this jar. If I do not do so, the jar is private to me. 13 blocks have been registered. This basically means that 13 different blocks or 13 different classes or varying functionalities have been imported into the system. To create a simple workflow, let me drag and drop the arithmetic block onto the canvas. Doing this opens a small block-like window. The value of the string operand as configured by default is add. To change that, I simply have to edit the value of add here. The add block or the arithmetic block takes two inputs, operand 1 and operand 2, which are integers. I've defined another class which defines a constant block. I specify the value of this constant to be say 5 and the other to be 7. I then draw connecting lines from the output of one block to the input of the second one. And this essentially completes the workflow. To execute this workflow, I click on the schedule button, and here the job is completed. 5 plus 7 have been added to give 12. I can go ahead and chain more operations in front of it. For example, I can use another arithmetic block and another constant block. With save 2. This time, let me perform the multiply operation on this. I then go ahead and chain them up together, and then I schedule this job again. As you can see, 5 plus 7 are added to give 12, and 12 has been multiplied by 2 to give 24. This is a basic example of the usage of the Workflow Designer. Many more complicated complex functionalities have been integrated in the project, which we'll see in another video. Another type of output supported by the Workflow Designer is a table. For example, let's see a block which is defined to output the multiplication table of a particular number. For example, say I want to print out the multiplication table of the number 5. And I want to print this table up to 5 times 10. I can simply schedule this job, and it gives me two options. One, to open the table in a new window. As you can see, 5 times 1 to 5 times 10 has been printed. Or I can download this as a CSV file. You can open the CSV file in any spreadsheet editor, for example, Microsoft Excel. The Workflow Designer also supports an output of type graph. For example, I've created a line equation block which requires 3 constant blocks as input. I wish to plot the equation of the line x squared equals y, or y equal to x squared. I want to start plotting the line from 0 all the way up to, let's say, less than 10, so around 9. And the increment of plotting the points is, for example, 1. I'll go ahead and schedule this job. I can open the graph in a new tab. As you can see, the line y is equal to x squared has been plotted here. Or I can also download this entire JSON and import it into an online editor like plotly.js, for example. Or I could simply download this entire plot as a PNG. The Workflow Designer also supports file inputs and outputs. For example, I use a file to string blocks, which essentially takes as input a single file and outputs the contents of that file onto the entire block output. I have a remote file chooser where I can actually go ahead and upload a single file. There's a basic file containing some text, and I choose that to be the input of this block, and I schedule. As you can see, the contents of the file have been read, and this is the output, which are actually the contents of that test.txt file. Hello world, this is some text. Another thing I can do is I can return the output of a block to be a file. For example, I have another block which says string to file, which takes as input the string that has been made by the previous block and then returns the output as a file. I'll schedule this job. And you can see that the output has been created as an output file, which I can just simply download. I'm going to open it. Since it's a simple file, I'm going to open it in a text editor. And here it is. In same manner, I can return any image file, or any video, or anything, any piece of data that you're working on. It's not limited to text files. The remote file repository actually provides you two options of using either a shared repository, which is common to all users on the server, or a private My Files directory, which is specific to your own self. You can go ahead and upload files here and download them and manage them like a simple remote directory. The Workflow Designer project also supports mounting a remote HDFS platform. Please read through the documentation to implement that yourself. The Workflow Designer also supports importing or exporting an existing workflow. The workflows are stored as a simple JSON file. The Workflow Designer has an inbuilt job scheduler, which you can use to track jobs that don't simply terminate in a short time, and you want to schedule them and probably do something else, visit some other websites, and come back to it when it's done. For example, here I have a workflow that actually has a time delay inbuilt into it. Each delayed constant block has a delay of around whatever value is configured into them using the property window in milliseconds. Then I simply use the arithmetic block to create a workflow of mathematical operations. What this basically means that the delayed constant block will wait for a time duration of 5 seconds before actually sending the output, that is the value of 100, to the arithmetic block. Let me just schedule this workflow to show you how it works. The job is now running. After 5 seconds, the first block got completed. After another 5 seconds, the second block is also completed. And after the last 5 seconds, this block was ready. Once all 3 blocks were ready, the workflow could simply perform the arithmetic operations and add them up. For example, you have a job that takes more than just 5 seconds, or maybe something like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and something north of that. You can go ahead and just simply schedule this job multiple times just to simulate too many jobs running. Then you can go to the scheduler, which basically hosts the jobs list. All the jobs that have been executed on the server, jobs that are running, or jobs that are waiting for execution are shown here. As you can see, a job just completed. To check the progress of the job, I can simply click on load, and then it displays the status of that job, when it started, when it ended, and what the actual result was. If you have better computing resources, you can configure for more than just 2 jobs to be running simultaneously on a multi-threaded environment. The workflow designer can also be used to do complicated operations, for example, machine learning. This is an example of the basal neural network workflow. You can see that this project uses the remote browser to select files, a number of input properties on the single block, and the same block chained over and over again to simulate the neural network layers. And all of these are fed to the neural network classifier. This operation is resource intensive. The color of the block actually indicates the execution status. A blue indicates the execution is complete. A red will indicate the presence of an error on the block. Clicking on show log shows the actual input and the output stream and the error stream of the block and is useful for debugging. Since jobs like these can tend to be time consuming, the scheduler function is really beneficial in such cases, wherein you can simply schedule a job and then even close the browser window. You can then use the scheduler jobs list option to look back at any of the jobs that have been completed previously. The output type of this workflow is a CSV file, that is a table type of output. Here you can see the truth matrix of the neural network training operation. This is an example of the log that can be actually used for debugging or simple basic observation of what's going on in the actual block. The workflow designer also supports remote HDFS, that's a Hadoop distributed file system. For example, we are using a workflow by the INCF organization, which looks like this. This allows a file location to be chosen from the remote HDFS. The HDFS can be accessed as a simple file as we have done earlier in the remote browser. And this can then be used to perform the operations in the workflow.